CV-E. This case is a Guadalupe County case. We're here today on an emergency motion that was filed by Ms. January. I am presently, because this is an emergency, I'm hearing this from Caldwell County while I'm here at the courthouse here in Caldwell, but we are live streaming in compliance with the Open Courts Act. So with that being said, Ms. Guadano, if you'll start announcements of the attorneys for us, please.
Melissa Cuadrado for the Department of Family and Protective Services.
Ms. January.
Yes, Judge. Stacy January on behalf of Ms. Alyssa Martin, who's the Joint Managing Conservator with the department.
Okay, Mr. Schulte.
Daniel Schulte, attorney ad litem for the child.
Okay, the court does note that we have with us representatives from Belong, as well as Anthony's mother, Ms. Martin, who is participating with us by video today. So Ms. January, this is your motion that was filed asking for an emergency hearing. So if you'll tell me what it is that you and your client are seeking today, please.
Judge, I believe you're aware of the facts of the case. Ms. Martin is the PMC of Anthony because her daughter passed away when Anthony was very young. Anthony has been placed in an RTC facility, and the department through Belong, I believe, has attempted to work with Miss Martin. However, the facility, it's beyond. I don't know. I'll let you hear the evidence, but there were court orders that my client was joint managing. My client wanted to be involved in specialist appointments. This child has many specialists to include. He has rheumatoid arthritis issues, mental health issues, psychotropic medication issues. Repeatedly, they wouldn't acknowledge her. They wouldn't let her join in on the meetings or the doctor's appointments. Most recently, her biggest concern was Anthony had a psychological, in that psychological, it revealed that he had no family to provide the psychologist with any history of the family, which is 100% not true. Miss Martin would have been more than willing to participate in that. It appears that they put the child on Depakote without her permission. She learned just today that the child was put on Depakote back in March. Her daughter had a severe toxicity reaction to that, and ultimately, within months, her daughter had passed away. So that is very, very concerning for my client. And now Anthony today is in a psychiatric hospital due to some suicidal ideation. So I just felt the need to bring this to the court. My client's very upset and concerned, and she wanted to be here to testify, Judge.
Okay, so Ms. January, is there any specific relief that you and your client are requesting today?
I just think 100% she needs to be included in the medical and the doctor's appointments. And when this child is put on different psychotropic medications at his young age, while she understands he is special needs and he does need the treatment, and she's not trying to push back against that. It's just the complete lack of allowing her to participate in anything, which the information could be instrumental in getting the child the help that he needs. And despite our multiple attempts to have weekly updates with the facility, somehow they can't manage to do that. I do believe the department's looking for another placement now. We did learn that recently, but it's just I don't know how we can force them to comply and to make her part of the treatment team. But with that Depakote, it was just very alarming, and that's why I felt the need to bring it to the court's attention.
Okay, and in reviewing my notes from our last hearing, we were last here on April 20th, and at that time I had ordered that Ms. Martin was authorized to participate in medical and psychiatric or psychological appointments for Anthony. So it was my expectation that she should be able to participate. Also, as a joint managed conservator, even if she does not have the ultimate authority to consent to medication, she still needs to be involved in the process. So Ms. Quadrado, tell me what it is that the department knows at this point, and if there's anything that you're requesting of the court today.
Judge, it's my understanding from my client that there have been some attempts to include Miss Martin, and it just hasn't worked out. Either she has been working or there was no service. And I'm not at all suggesting that that's been the case in all possible times, but I do know that has happened at least once. I also know from my client that Anthony has actually been on Depakote since he was placed at the facility. This wasn't a new medication that was prescribed to him recently. And that information has been included in paperwork that has been provided to Miss Martin throughout this case. I also do know from my client that it is looking at alternative placements and may have found one, but that there may be an issue with that placement being able to accept Anthony because of his because of a diagnosis of autism, despite the fact that it hasn't that any that those kinds of behaviors have not been observed in Anthony recently. That facility did tell Belong that that because of that diagnosis, they may not be able to accept him. And we are just here to see what the court can do, to see what the court can order. But Belong has made every effort to attempt to include Miss Martin in meetings and updates and so on.
Okay, so Ms. Quadrado, who would be a representative from Belong that you think would have the most information on this case? Looks like Ms. Pollux is volunteering herself. So Ms. Pollux, okay, Ms. Pollux, since this is, I call this as an emergency hearing, I understand that, Belong and everyone else didn't have that much preparation time, just basically one day or a little bit more than a day. So I'm going to kind of let you tell me in a narrative fashion, just how Anthony's doing and what your interaction has been. And then if, the attorneys, I'll have given opportunity to ask you questions too. So you'll go ahead and start, Ms. Pollux. Thank you.
Yes. So I was actually supposed to go visit with Anthony on Tuesday. And they notified me while I was on my way that he was struggling at school. The school had notified them that he was having some issues. He had made a threat to tie his shoelaces around his neck and eat 2 items I think he assumed he was allergic to. Not sure the relevance with that, but so they did feel a concern that he needed to be assessed. I chose not to visit him that day because he's only met me once. I didn't want to add more stress to the situation, meeting new people for children with autism that can sometimes be a stressor. So I chose not to visit that day. I did stay in contact with the placement to try and figure out what we could do to get him into a psych hospital or get him assessed at least. I have throughout the process had to be the middle person between placement and the grandmother. The placement has made it clear to me that when they accepted him, they didn't realize he was JMC. And they, from their words, not mine, did not like the approach that grandma has made. Again, I've tried to be the middle person and facilitate, both parties and getting Anthony the best care that he needs. It's been very challenging. The schedules haven't matched up. Either they give me an appointment and it's after the appointment's already occurred, so I can't provide that information to grandma. I've asked them to contact grandma directly, and that hasn't really happened so much. Again, I think there's a difference in personalities, and they're struggling with that. As Miss Quadrado mentioned, we have identified a couple placements. We've been searching for a little bit because we knew this was an issue. There's one placement that contacted me today, Hill Country Youth Ranch, which is in region. They told me they would have accepted him already. They do have a little bit of concerns about his functioning in terms of autism, so they want to ask more questions, but they're not ruling him out just yet. I have presented this to grandma. She was open to that when I spoke to her. And they have assured me that they'll, include her in as much of the process as it's possible. Unfortunately, I can't do anything until he's released from the hospital, but she and I have been trying to work together with the hospital to try and at least talk to Anthony. I have requested hospital workers so they can go in and see him as soon as possible, but it's overarching a lack of communication. And I think part of that is dealing with him being out of region and me not seeing him all the time. The courtesy worker is trying to help me, the LPS worker is trying to help me get more information, but again, it's a battle to get things ahead of time, I would say. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Paul.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say there are 2 other placements that we're reviewing him, but I haven't heard much from them yet, but it's more than just this placement.
Okay, so Ms. January, do you have any questions for Ms. Pollux?
Judge, I believe I'll save time and call my client, and if I need to redirect things with Ms. Pollux, I'll do that, but I think I'm good right now.
Okay, Ms. Quadrado, any questions you'd like to ask Ms. Pollux?
Ms. Pollux, do you believe that you've done everything in your power to try and facilitate Miss Martin's participation in Anthony's treatment?
I feel that I have. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Schulte, any questions of the witness?
Just one. So who ultimately has the medical consent power for Anthony B to put on psychotropic medications?
So with all of our kiddos who are in, and I want to make a correction earlier, he's in a GRO, he's not in an RTC. For all of our kiddos that are in that type of placement, it is myself and my supervisor that are listed. So I should be included. Okay.
So that should authorize the medication then?
No, I wasn't included in the appointment.
Who authorized it then?
The placement. He had he had a psychiatric medication management appointment, and he has those monthly. And I've been working with the the LPS worker, to try and get her and myself at least in those appointments if we can't get grandma on a 3-way call. I have not been notified of any appointments prior to the appointment. I've notified after, but not prior.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. So there was a statement that Anthony has been on Depakote for a while now. Ms. Pollux, can you kind of tell me what the timeline for his medication has been?
He has been on Depakote since his first appointment when he was placed at this placement in March. I think it was March 22nd that he was prescribed it. I was not aware of the family history relating to Depakote, so that didn't raise a red flag for me personally, because a lot of our kiddos are frankly on that medication. It wasn't until Miss Martin notified me, I think it was earlier this week, it may have been late last week, that was a concern for her.
And Ms. Pollux, what kind of notice are you getting about Anthony's, doctor's appointments and all those things? I mean, are you not learning about them until after they've occurred either?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. Ms. Quadrado, any other questions for Ms. Pollux?
No, Judge.
Okay. So Ms. Quadrado, any other witnesses you wish to call?
No, I don't have any other further witnesses, Judge.
Okay. Ms. January, any witnesses you wish to call today?
Yes, Judge, I'd like to call Ms. Martin. I'm going to ask some specific questions here at the beginning. So briefly, when Anthony came into the department's care, was he on psychotropic medications?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And did those medications include Depakote?
No.
Okay. Did the medications he was on require blood level checks?
No, ma'am, not the ones when he went into care.
Okay. And could you just let the court know how many specialists he had at the time he came into the department's care?
Just the two, psychiatry and pediatric rheumatology. And then, well, and also ophthalmology, because he has to have his eyes checked more frequently than the normal population.
Okay, so let's start with the little bit less complex one. Were you included in the rheumatology appointment?
No, and I had probably been working. I have always made it very clear to the home that the doctor's office could call me. As a matter of fact, the rheumatology, I told them, I said, could you please have the nurse or doctor call me so that I can give them some history or so that I can answer questions. And I remember texting during the appointment, are you there? Are you there? Are you going to call me? With no reply.
Okay. And to your knowledge, did Anthony have that rheumatology appointment?
Yes, yes. And Brianna sent me a paper, but it was only what they filled out for the department, whatever that form is. I don't have like a full visit note. All I know is that they continued his Enbrel. I don't know anything about his blood work. If the doctor thought he was getting better, getting worse.
Okay.
Or anything.
So, as far as the big issue with the psychiatric needs, now let me back up. What medications was Anthony on when he came into care, if you remember the psychotropic meds?
Yes, ma'am. So he was on Concerta for his ADHD. He was on clonidine, which is normally a blood pressure medicine. However, its off-label usage can be for sleep and for mood control. He was on Trileptal, which is a seizure medicine, but off-label usage is for mood control. Risperidone and as needed Atarax. And then he also took melatonin.
Okay. And you recognize that Anthony needed help when he came into care, right?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And so to your knowledge, what, if any, of the medication that he was on is he currently on? Did the medication get changed without your knowledge?
Yes. When I received the psychologist report, I noticed that there were different medications. I noticed that the Trileptal was not on there, and instead Depakote was there. And also he is on something called desmopressin, which is supposed to treat enuresis, which is bedwetting or wetting himself.
Okay.
He is still on the other medicines.
Now, had the facility or the doctor treating him have notified you of the Depakote, would you have consented or raised an alarm as to the Depakote?
I would have definitely have had a conversation with the doctor and let him know about my daughter's history. And just to clarify, I'm grandmother. I'm not mother. My daughter, Anthony's mother, passed away some time ago. And right before her passing away, she had been on this medication. She didn't directly die from that medication, but she had had a psychotic episode requiring hospitalization. And she just went downhill from there and ultimately took her own life. And also, and let me just let the court know I'm a registered nurse also, and I don't know if he's had blood levels drawn. Depakote, or also known as valproic acid, normally requires blood levels to maintain a therapeutic level. And then this incident happened at the school. But anyway, when I saw that psychologist report, that was the first time I had been told, and I had made it clear to the group home that I wanted to be included in the psychiatrist appointments if I could, but that they needed to give me notice. I cannot just walk away from a patient's bedside. Okay. If I have notice, I can make arrangements. I have told Ebony that. I have it in text messages.
Okay.
I don't know.
Let me just back up just quickly to the, so now may or may not be because of the Depakote, but in your reviewing the psychological, did you find information in there that made you feel that Anthony had regressed, such as the pull-ups and things? Could you briefly just tell the court about that?
When I read the psychological report, the psychologist indicated that he had defecated on himself during the assessment, and it also stated that he wears pull-ups full-time. I don't know if that is true. I did talk with a worker at the home the other day. They said, no, he doesn't wear pull-ups all the time, just at bedtime, which he had at my house at bedtime. But And
so now that Anthony is in the psychiatric or hospitalized for concerning behaviors and statements, is that why you wanted, one of the reasons why you wanted me to bring this to the court's attention about your need to be notified?
Yes, and you know, about the medications, I mean, it was my understanding, being joint managing conservator, that I had equal footing in decision making. So if I misunderstood that, I apologize. But I have continually tried to find out information. I've tried to be as nice about it as I can. I don't just show up to that group home. I go and see him, you know, once a month. I try to find out, and my messages just go unanswered. And so I go through Bree. She has sent me information, and even Bree has told me that it has been difficult for her to get information. So I'm highly concerned that there's this lack of cooperation. And I will be honest, I was pretty incensed when I read the psychological report that they wrote. Give history. There is a very strong history here, and he's going down the same path. And
as your daughter, is that what you mean? As your daughter, and that's what concerns you?
Yes,
okay.
Ma'am. Yes,
and
ma'am.
Just to backtrack a little bit, now it hasn't been Belong or Miss Pollux that's been the communication breakdown. It's been through the facility for the most part.
For the most part, I kind of think maybe all around, but Miss Pollux had indicated to me that even she has trouble getting information from them. And also the facility, or I keep saying facility, the home, Ebony has indicated to me that, you know, they only have to tell me what they're required to. And I said, well, I'm JMC. So, all I asked for was just a weekly update, maybe FaceTime once a week so that I can see him, so that he knows he's not been abandoned, or that, because Anthony constantly worries that something's going to happen to me. I would sneeze and he thought I was going to die. Like, he would ask me, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you going to die? That is a valid fear of his. So I'm just trying to maintain contact so that he knows I'm still here. Ebony at the center had told, I believe, Ms. Pollux and possibly me at one time, that it was impossible to do weekly updates.
Okay.
I don't, yeah.
So you are in agreement for the department to look for additional placements,
Oh,
perhaps?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. I'll go ahead and pass the witness, Judge. Pass the witness. Thank you.
Ms. Furtado.
I don't have any questions for this witness, Judge.
Mr. Schulte.
No questions either.
Okay, Ms. January, any other witnesses?
No, Judge, that I believe that's what I needed the court to be aware.
Okay, so Ms. Pollux, if you can tell me, is the department looking for a new placement? I mean, are you looking because we seem to have problems with this one, or are we looking because we think there's a, you know, potentially a better fit for him somewhere else?
We've been actually and the reason why I requested placement was for someone a placement that would be willing to work with grandma, hopefully in region, because that is much better in terms of my communication with the placement. I can just go and show up if I'm not getting what I need. So that's what I had requested. And like I said, we have 3 places currently looking at him, specifically Hill Country Youth Ranch is very interested.
Okay, so obviously it's a lot more complicated than I think it is. To me, it's just communication. It shouldn't be that complicated. Ms. Martin, the department does have the authority to consent to things for Anthony, but that's after, you know, consultation with you. And part of the problem is it's very hard for you to have meaningful input in this case if you're not provided with the information. I don't think it's that complicated, but to hear that Ms. Pollux is having issues at Belong, just tells me that there's a reason to move him. We need to move Anthony. I'm going to order that he be moved, but the department has to locate that place first. Like, this doesn't have to happen today. It doesn't even have to happen tomorrow, but we need to be moving him to a facility that will meet his needs after he's released from his current hospitalization, and that will work with all the parties in this case. Ms. Martin, I'll just tell you, some placements unfortunately just do not understand the concept of having a joint managing conservator. They just assume that the department makes all the decisions, that the parents are just, you know, or other conservators are just somewhere in the background, and that's not the point of this case. The point of the case is to return, you know, Anthony, or be able to return Anthony to your home. So I am going to order that Anthony be moved. There needs to be clear, you know, understanding with the placement that Ms. Martin is entitled to information, both his medical information and just generally how he's doing. Obviously, whether it's, you know, Hill Country Youth Ranch or another facility, I don't believe that they schedule, you know, a psychiatric appointment and then they just show up like a day later. Like, that doesn't happen. I mean, these things are scheduled far in advance. There's no reason why they can't give notice to the department and, you know, ultimately to Ms. Martin. Ms. Martin, I think it's okay that you get all your information from, you know, Ms. Pollux or someone else from Belong, but they have to be provided with the information. And I will say it's not acceptable if Belong's not getting the information. If you don't know how your child's doing in that placement, that's a reason to call licensing.
May I have a quick question? So he's in the hospital and they call for consent to give medications. Should they be calling me, or should they be calling Brianna or Ms. Pollux for that?
They should be calling the department.
Okay.
But Ms. Martin, I will tell you, hold on a minute. Let me listen.
Yes,
I understand that you're a nurse and I want you to be involved in the information. Okay. But there has to be a person ultimately who is the person to consent. Like, there has to be that person. And I believe my prior orders in the case are that the department had the authority to consent in this case.
Okay. That's what I was asking. Yes, sir. Yeah.
But Ms. Martin, I understand that, you know, this is a very frustrating thing for you. And I'm personally frustrated because I don't think there's any reason why you shouldn't know about any psychological appointments, psychologists, psychiatrists, rheumatology, anywhere he's going. Like, those are appointments are generally, you know, scheduled out several weeks. And so there's no reason you shouldn't be able to get notice of those. I am going to order, because it seems like there's been such a large change in his medication, I am going to order a medication review in this case. One of the issues is now that he's, in a hospitalized setting, I'm going to say that he's potentially on, I call them crisis medication. There's meds for the hospitalization, but most likely he will not leave with those medications. So I think we need to find out, based upon what he's been on in the past, and that's all information Ms. Martin has that she can share, what has worked for him in the past, what has not worked for him, and then obviously what he should be on at this point. So Ms. Pollux, I am going to tell you that Belong is responsible for providing Ms. Martin with this information. So you need to get all the appointment information. If there's a calendar or however, the placements keep this, so that you personally are responsible for passing this information on to Ms. Martin. Additionally, I don't know, Ms. Pollux, if you're getting copies of all the medical records, but if you do have those need to be shared with Ms. Martin so that she can read them. Ms. Martin's in a position that a lot of our caregivers and parents are not in. Not only can she read them, but she can actually understand to a greater extent than probably some of us. So please make sure that she gets copies of the medical records. Ms. January, is there anything else that you think I should consider ordering today? Okay, Mr. Schulte, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay. Anything else you think the court should consider ordering today?
No, Judge. Hopefully we can get the change in placement. We'll correct a bunch of these errors. Just for my information, so if he's moved to Hill Country, the placement there, where exactly is that located at?
That's in the Kerrville area, I think. Okay. Ms. Pollux, is that right?
Yes, it's in Ingram.
In Ingram, okay.
All right, thank you.
And I have had several children at Hill Country Youth Ranch. That's and they've done. I don't have complaints about that facility for other children. And as I understand, we'll say Anthony's profile, right? I would say that they've done a fairly good work with other children with a similar type profile. Obviously, every child has their own facts and needs, but I will say that we've had some pretty good resolutions to our cases after children have been there for periods of time. All right, so Ms. January, I think we lost you, or you froze at some point. I have ordered that Anthony's placement be changed, but that's not an emergency. So when he's released and the department has a new location, then hopefully they can get him to that placement out of his current one.
Yes, Judge, and perhaps we can get with the department to see if blood level draws for the Depakote has been done, and maybe but I don't know. I'll work with Belong in the department so we can work with that.
Okay, I've also ordered a medication review for him.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, Ms. Cudato, any questions about the court's orders today, or anything else you'd like me to consider?
Just that I understand you're ordering a change in placement and you're putting no time frame on that change of placement. Is that correct?
Well, I want him moved, but if I say it has to be done by Monday and Hill Country Youth Ranch hasn't accepted him, then I don't want him put in some place that nobody wants him at. I mean, okay. I want him to go to the place that everybody wants him to go, whether that's one day from now or a week from now.
Okay.
I don't go ahead.
Excuse me, sorry. And then would you like the medication review to be done within a certain amount of time?
Yes, we'll say the medication review needs to be done within 21 days.
Okay.
Can I say something real quick? Typically,
yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. Typically, after a hospitalization, they will have a pretty quick psychiatric appointment, usually within 2 weeks. I know when he was in the hospital here before, they would see them pretty quickly so that they can do things, like that.
Okay, so Ms. Martin, let me explain the medication review to you. That is something that's available under his Medicaid. as something that I can order from the bench as a judge. And so it's a slightly different process because I'll bring in a third party person to from Medicaid to look at what he's had in the past, what he's on now, and make sure that it's an appropriate thing. This is not somebody that will examine Anthony. This is kind of a paper read, like an administrative review of what's going on at this point. So it's this is something that's available to us under Star Health, his Medicaid provider.
Thank you for explaining. Okay.
Okay. Again, thank you everybody for making yourselves available today on such short notice. I don't normally order emergency hearings on 1 day notice, but I did think it was important based upon some of the accusations and allegations in the motion that we get this thing heard quickly. So I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your evening, and I'm going to excuse you at this time.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you.